Good afternoon and welcome to this month's Team Surgery with Jump. And this month we're talking about client acquisition in the modern world. We're going to sort of outline how we can develop a better client acquisition strategy by looking at various different things. We've got lots of things to talk about. Today I'm joined by Dave Pye and Paul Jacobs, and hopefully we're going to be joined by Martin Ewings, who's having problems logging in at the moment, who's a new member of Jump. So I'm going to kick off nice and simply, first and foremost, and start the ball rolling. So the ball is very simple. First question, how do you shift to a digital first approach that impacts the traditional methods of client acquisition? And where do you see the balance between digital engagement and personal relationships?
It's a tough question, this one, in many respects, because, I think for people listening and for us, having been in the recruitment industry for many years, client acquisition has always been based upon personal contacts. I mean, old-fashioned picking up a phone, trying to reach people, engaging them in a conversation, offering them candidates, and so forth. And I think increasingly, it's becoming much more difficult to do that. People aren't always at work, they're at home. We don't have access to their phone numbers, their mobile numbers. We are reduced to having to try to reach them via email or emails. It's more difficult. I think trying to find the correct blend is really important. How you flag your services or the abilities of your candidates can be done digitally, but at some stage you have to find a method of encouraging a client to speak to you, because our job is always about developing relationships, always about having conversations, about developing deep and meaningful communication, something that digital methods simply can't do. So I think that, the danger, if you like, is to go one way or the other. I think there are still a lot of recruitment businesses who bang away on the phone and get very frustrated because it's very difficult to reach people. And there are other people, lots of recruitment businesses, that spend their entire lives emailing, failing to pick up the phone. And I think somewhere in between, where you're blending the two methods, is where you need to be. But I want to be really clear at the end of whatever process you decide to take. Communicating, speaking to people, clients and candidates, is where it's at, and it's always been where it's at, people by people.
I think that's right. And I think in some respects, if you look at the balance, for me, there's a much more digital preferred approach in the gathering stage of the work that we do. But when it comes to the closing stage, getting someone over the line, getting them to accept the job, getting the client to understand the package and the proposition and the reasons why somebody want to move, that's very difficult to do that digitally in most recruitment sectors. In some sectors, when you're onboarding very quickly and you've got a volume of people to onboard, you can have a much longer digital support. But I think, as Paul says, from the relationship point of view, with the growth of AI, the growth of digitization, the importance of relationships and managing those relationships and understanding the culture and all of that matters ever more, because you stand out. And if you're not doing it and you're trying to rely totally on digital, then you won't be as memorable as those that are doing it in the older way, if you like. Here's Martin.
So I'm just going to repeat the question, Martin, because obviously you've had trouble logging in. So thank you for getting in the first place, and then we can sort of move on from there. The question was, how has the shift to a digital first approach impacted the traditional methods of client acquisition, and where do we see the balance between digital engagement and personal relationships?
Okay. Hopefully you can hear me, and thanks for your patience with me getting on. I personally think that the end goal for this should always be personal relationships. You shouldn't look to engage with your clients purely remotely. I think it's just the tools that have changed. I think we used to focus on cold calling, giving someone the yellow pages and telling them to flick through it, and then moving on to e-shots and things like that. Whereas I think now it's just the engagement tool that warms a customer up. So I think it's an essential tool. The digital marketing is an essential tool you have to have, but the goal should be to win personal relationships and build personal relationships. It's just a different route to the end result, I think.
So I think it's a really interesting question, because I think there's lots of things that have changed in, since lockdown. I think the lockdown sort of created a massive amount of changes, and I think one of those changes is the reliance on the digital marketplace to dictate on who's good and who's bad. Because whenever you buy anything now, the first thing you do is you social proof it. So again, people social proofing your recruitment agency and your recruitment services prior to them actually engaging with you or even engaging with you. So I think we've got to start to think that there is a huge digital impact that's happening behind the scenes that we're not seeing. And if you start to think about what the buying trends, it was something like round about marketing was something around about 25 to 35% of the buying cycle. The rest of it was all the human acquisition. That has massively flipped. It's now around about 70% of the buying cycle is done online before they engage with an actual salesperson. So we've got to start to think that the impact is exactly what we're saying, is we need to get to the point where we can then have the human interaction with the person to have that conversation about whether it's selling your product, selling a service, selling in a candidate, etc. But to get there, I think now there's a different way of getting there, and that digital marketing that goes out from social media, email, etc., has a massive impact. And I think if you are just doing one or the other, you're going to lose out. But doing a blend of the pair is going to absolutely start to move you forward. But you've got to make sure that you're doing it not just to your clients, but to your candidates as well. And that's a whole different conversation. So I think we're all saying the same thing. And I think most people on the marketplace will say the same thing. So let's move to the second question then, because I think this sort of leads more into a deeper conversation. What are some of the common mistakes recruitment agencies make when trying to develop a strong client value proposition, and how can they refine it to better align with market demands?
For me, I think.
Right. I've got a pause, sorry.
Sorry, Dave. For me, I think that the situation we often find ourselves in when we're trying to create distance between our service offering, our market positioning, and our competitors is that we converse with our own people, we come up with bright ideas, and then we execute whatever great ideas we've had. And what we don't do, as we should do, is spend time talking to clients to find out what it is they want from us. And I think it's one of the weaknesses I see in many recruitment businesses, that we're never really short on good ideas, but are we sure that the solutions and the service provisions that we imagine up and eventually execute is what a client wants? And this is back to the first question, Howard, in some respects. And I think we've all said the same thing. It always will be, and still is about relationship building. And obviously talking to clients regularly, meeting them regularly, getting in front of them, whether that's in this format or face-to-face, which of course is preferable, and asking open questions about the quality of our service and what the client would like to see from us in terms of what we can do to improve, how we can perform better than others, what services he would like or she would like to receive from us, some of which might be chargeable, some of which may be free. All of those things are important. And I think that when we come up with these great ideas and fail to talk to our customers, that's when things go wrong. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. There needs to be an open line of communication consistently to individuals face to face, and from time to time, forums, get-togethers, seminars, conferences with our clients to talk to them about market conditions and what it is they want from us. I think those things are super important.
Before Dave and Martin jump in on that answer, all those that are attending, what I'd like you to put in the chat box, if you can, is what you think clients actually want. Because I'll be really interested to see what you guys think, what clients actually want. Dave, Martin, jump in.
Yeah, I was going to add to Paul's point. I mean, not including the client when you're trying to put a client value proposition is nuts. So that's an obvious one. I was doing a quarterly business review, QBR review, with a client not so long ago, and we introduced the question for the leaders of the business to ask their own sales staff. And the question was to the end point, Howard, what you'd put. How do you know what the market is demanding of you? Specifically, come and tell us how you know. And it was really interesting because some consultants were rather vague and didn't really know, or they would say things, well, I saw something on the BBC about this, or I heard a candidate do that. But some were much more specific. And I think if you can be as specific as possible with that, that will help shape what your client value proposition will be. Because if it doesn't meet what the market needs, you're not going to sell anything.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Client voice, it has to be part of the conversation. But I'd also say that we're often in danger of looking at previous experiences as a way of mapping out future demand. And whilst it's a good indicator, you need as many data points as possible to feed into your decision making as to what you're going to build as a client value proposition going forwards. Clients are some of that, but my advice would be to take on board as much advice, data, information as you can do to see where the market is going and try and predict what they might want next as well. And that kind of advice from peers and people who've been through the mill is invaluable.
So it's interesting. We've had two people come through straight away. Clients want quality candidates. Rebecca, I think they want someone who is 100% committed to finding them the best people for them. That's what they have, or that's what they have to convey and communicate. Key is importance. Clients want transparency, the good, the bad, the ugly, etc. It's really interesting. I thought about this question over the weekend, and I went out to speak to a couple of mates of mine who sort of run businesses, etc., and sort of asked them. And I said, if you were working with a recruitment agency, what do you actually want? And it wasn't about service. They weren't talking about recruitment methodology, etc. All they said was, we want candidates. All we want is a really good candidate. And therefore it's, what are we doing to generate good candidates? And if you think about everyone, when you start to think about recruiting, client rings you up, you take a job specification, okay, we haven't got products instantly to sell to the candidate, to the client. So we've got to then go onto the job boards, etc. So I think the common mistake that recruitment make when looking at their client value proposition, we develop all these client value propositions, but then what we do not do then is evaluate our candidate demand, looking at our database and saying, right, what candidates could fulfill the demand that our clients need? Because then if we know what candidates can fulfill those needs, then we can actually hit the client demand and what they want at the market time. And the market changes, because obviously when the market's less candidate shy than it is, then they want service and a better service. But at the moment, it's not. It's a candidate shy market, so they're desperate for candidates. So I think we've got to start to think we've got to align our value proposition to what our clients want. And then I think we've got to look at market demand and start to look at how we look at our candidate database and how we can leverage that more to actually then take our candidates to the marketplace rather than wait for the clients to come to us. So I think we've got to really start to develop that in a different way and looking at it and say, how do we get maximized productivity from our client base? And the way to do that is to maximize our candidate availability to put forward to clients. That leads to a different type of question. In your experience, then, how can recruitment agencies ensure that their digital footprint reflects their client value proposition? And can you share sort of any examples where you've actually done that and put that out to the marketplace?
I think this is, and when we're using acronyms, I think this is EVP. I think this is employer value proposition. So I think what recruitment businesses or any business needs to do, regardless of whether it's in our industry or outside, is be very clear about their values and their behaviors, their mission, their vision. And that needs to be reflected in everything they do. That needs to be reflected in their brand image, how they're seen, website, even down to logo, fonts, colors. It's certainly about what they post, blogs, posts, webinars, etc. It needs to be a clear message coming to their customer base, but that also needs to be reflected internally. You have to have accuracy. You can't say we believe in X, Y, and Z if working inside the business is diametrically opposite to what the external image is demonstrating. So that consistency internally is to the external image is vitally important. People get extremely disappointed when they join businesses to discover that what they thought was a wonderful glossy brochure isn't exactly like that when they're working within the organization. It needs to be consistency. And lastly, the third element of EVP is the way people feel about working in the business. How much autonomy are they given? How much responsibility are they given? How do the processes work? How are they treated? Are the behaviors and values that they feel and see around them reflective of the external image and so forth? Now, I mean, this is a big subject. It's a really big subject. If you look at average websites in our industry, because they all look and sound pretty similar, I think. I do have a good example of a particular client of mine who is absolutely invested in sustainability as a person. He believes in green, basically, and he gives X% of his invoicing to 3 charities that are involved in sustainability. And he's very clear about it. I mean, if you look at the website, I won't say who it is, but if you look at his website, he's very clear about his belief systems. And if you work with him, as I do, and you talk to him regularly, you find that everything that external is reflected internally. And I think the upside for him has been that he won the Best Newcomer of the Year award with the REC last year. He's had absolutely no problem in recruiting some outstanding consultants to work with him. And his turnover today has been well in excess of anything that he and I'd planned when we first got the business launched. A lot of that is to do with the fact that his clients and his staff have really bought into his belief systems. He's engaged people who believe in what he believes in. So I think this is a really big subject matter.
Yeah, that's a great story because it shows that if you get it right, you'll get rewarded. And I think a lot of agencies, when they try to promote themselves digitally, what they're promoting is what they do. And where I've seen some success is when agencies promote what's happening in the market and their response to it. So rather than selling themselves, they're selling the value that they bring to the market. And the market changes, cyclically. Yeah. So it's been a challenging market for some. So that means for our clients, it's been a challenging market. So digitally promote that the market's been challenging, that this is how you work with your clients to overcome those challenges. And then you're seen as an ambassador for change. You're seen as an organization that actually makes a difference in the lives of its clients, rather than we're a really good organization. We do things really well. We find you the best candidates. We've got the best consultants. Because anybody can say that. But if you could demonstrate how you meet the market, I think that's where you get CVP that's aligned to a digital footprint.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you both said there. I think the key message for me is that I'm going to say something and then contradict myself. I think EVP should be consistent with all communication with candidates, customers, through your digital footprint, etc. But actually, the contradiction is it shouldn't be too rigid. It's a living and breathing thing that you and your staff need to feel passionate about. And your example, Paul, was brilliant. I mean, that obviously flows through that individual's DNA. I've seen larger organizations who are so controlling over the communication of the CVP that actually their staff become paralyzed with fear of getting it wrong. And your biggest digital footprint is reacting to the market and your staff posting content and talking. And you need to empower them and give them that freedom to be passionate about the value proposition. Otherwise, it's not, no one will ever hear about it.
So I think it's that autonomy, isn't it? So if you look at employer value proposition, which is about what our employers and what us as agency are offering to our employees, but client value proposition is about what we're offering our clients as a service. And I think we go back to that conversation about social proofing. If we're making sure that our Google reviews, our white papers on our skill set, etc., case studies are all over our website, etc. And I start to see people start to believe that. And you start to think about, we did a webinar probably 2-3 years ago now with clients, and we talked to them about, what they look for in recruitment agencies. And one of the things they said that they looked for is when they get called by a new recruitment agency, the first thing they do is Google them and they look for them. And so the first thing they look for is their LinkedIn profile. And they're not looking at their LinkedIn profile to see who they work for, see how good they are. what they're looking for is who they're connected to. So are they connected to the same people that they're connected to in their marketplace? Are they saying, if they're saying they're an IT expert, are they connected to the same people that they know? Because if not, then they say that is a bad sign that the recruitment agency isn't connected to the right people. And it's the same when I'll give a prime example similar to Paul's, but slightly differently. I changed or asked the client to change on their website where they were putting reviews from clients and reviews from candidates. It was a review from Dave from ABC company. It wasn't a review from Dave Pye from Jump. But as soon as they changed that and started to go out and saying, these are the companies that I'm working for, these are real life people who are giving these reviews, she said, within a month, they'd had 3 or 4 leads from clients who said, we've been on your website. I see you're working with this client. Okay, I want to come and have a talk to you about how we can do that. So we've got to start to think we've got our service value propositions that we're, or client value propositions that we're offering to clients. We've got to back that up with a digital footprint that says that it actually works and says how it works. If we can do that, then that's a very different proposition, because what you're doing is getting clients to social proof your capability and capacity. And I think that's what we start to think about when we start to think about driving that. And that leads the question into, acquisition. And I've been working with clients, and I said there's 4 areas of acquisition. So you've got that acquisition engagement, which is all your social media stuff, your email campaigns and marketing. You've got your human acquisition stuff, which is what Paul's talking about, David, except calling clients. You've got your hearts and minds acquisition, which is when you work the roles and demonstrate your capability, which Martin was talking about. And then you've got your retention. So the question is, how do you prioritize those things, and how do you connect those things into your client journey to make sure that you're maximizing your time with your clients?
What a question that is. I think
That's an A-level question.
It's really tough, isn't it? It comes an ology. That's an ology question, that is, Howard.
My kids are revising. I feel like I'm joining them.
Come on, old man, get on with it.
All right, I'll do my best. I'll do my best. Look, I mean, you talk about interconnection. They are all interconnected. It starts for me, and we've talked about it already, in your belief system as a business. Now, the business I used to run, Office Angels, our whole adage was about making sure that we thrilled clients. It wasn't about just satisfying their needs, giving them what they needed, great candidates, good service. That was fine. That's obviously what we were always going to do. But it was always about efforts that we would put, very conscious efforts to thrill people, to be, as my old boss used to say, dinner table conversation. She always said that if your business is spoken about on a Saturday evening between friends, you're doing the right things. They become your unpaid advocates. And I felt very strongly about that when I was running a very large company, that it wasn't just about giving a great temp or making a good placement. It had to be that people were thrilled to bits with the service. Now that comes down to an awful lot of things that we won't have the time to cover in great detail today, but detail is the correct word, because for me it is about detail, this attention to detail, and it's also very much about, and we've talked about it, understanding the human being you're talking to. I mean, Dave often talks about his old boss who said, I'm into IBM. Oh, really? You're into IBM? Really? We've got an agreement with IBM over. That's marvelous. Who in IBM are you talking to? Oh, I'm talking to a guy called Dave Pye. Great. So the reality is, we've got an agreement with Dave Pye, who happens to be one of about 100,000 employees. Nothing wrong with that, but we don't have IBM. But it's an important point, because we develop relationships with human beings. And it's that whole essence of delighting human beings, going the extra mile, looking at the detail, being attentive, being super professional in what we do, that interlinks everything you've just made a reference to, Howard. And if you miss out on one of those 4 elements, so if I turn the question and say, well, could we miss out one of those things? Or did you call it acquisition, engagement, human acquisition, hearts and mind, and retention? If you don't pay attention to at least one of those, everything falls down. So you have to be super concentrated and focused on this. And we won't have time today, but I do think a lot of it is to do with process. It's to do with coaching people. It's to do with training people and supporting people, so that there's a consistency in what we do. And although there is room and space for personalities, people to exhibit who they are as human beings, I actually think the best businesses, and outside of our industry, you can see it all around you, The very best world-class businesses work to very, very strict processes and procedures. And for me, world-class businesses have always got that discipline that sits just beneath that very personal, high-touch service.
I think if you, to your point, Paul, if you, by the way, I've left IBM now.
Have you?
I'm not the CEO of IBM.
You're not under
anymore.
itsy-bitsy machines, as we used to call them.
No.
There are other IT companies
those
available.
days are gone. Yes, I've joined Meta. Sorry. Just to say, if you look at those 4 words, those 4 phrases that Howard spoke about, the first one, does your client know you from a digital point of view? So if you broke down your clients, if you've got, say, 20 or 30 billion clients, as opposed to the long tail where you've got hundreds, but you could look at them and say, how well do they know you? Yeah. How well are they engaged with you? To your point, who do you know in the organisation, Paul? How well do they care about you? That will be the third one, and the final one is and you use the word, Paul, advocacy. Yeah, are they advocating? Are they your friend? Are they recommending you both internally within the organisation for maybe other services or externally to other companies? And if you took your clients, say your 30 clients, and did an exercise and looked at them, where are they on that journey? I think you could answer, as a recruitment leader running a business, you could answer those questions for yourself and challenge yourself with your leadership team. Are we that close to that company? Do they really know us? Do they advocate us? Do they refer us? Do they really care about us? Or are we just one of any other suppliers? And that can provoke some really good internal discussions for you and your leadership team about what the next step should be.
Well, I think from my point of view, first of all, I see what you guys have done now. Stick the new lad at the end, so you've drained the wisdom well by the time it comes down to me to.
That's not quite the way we see it.
The next one.
Martin, I think it's the fact that we consider you the most intelligent, so you're going to big finale. That's the way we see it.
We're bluffing, Martin.
I was just going to say that in my experience as well, be really careful not pigeonholing a customer into one of the 4 things. I think they move around the 4 sections, and the best example I've got is when in a previous iteration of my career, I sold a quite innovative service to a customer where we ended up wrapping up a load of recruitment, sole supply for 4 years. And I was really chuffed with that. But then towards the end of the 4 years, I got wind that they were thinking of going to market, potentially replacing us. And in a nutshell, it turned out I thought I'd sold them an innovative product. They thought they'd bought an innovative partner, and we didn't continue to innovate. So I would just say, do not pigeonhole a customer. Constantly assess your customers against those 4 priorities. Have stakeholders changed? Have their priorities changed? Do I need to give them the intensity as if they're a new customer?
Yeah.
So that kind of continuous focus, I think, is really important.
See, you added real wisdom there. That was good. There, 10 out of 10.
So where do I go then? Where do I go?
Yeah, that's right. Now.
So I think that to me, it's very simple. It's where do you spend your time and how do you interconnect both the client journey? I think if you start to think at the beginning of that client journey, it's who you're connected with and how you're marketing to those people. And that should be around about 25% of your time. The rest of your time, which is your human acquisition, your hearts and mind and retention, should be all client facing, should be out seeing the clients and talking to the clients. And it's interesting, I'm looking at my clients at the moment that are starting to build really big pipelines. How have they built it? They haven't built it by just doing email marketing. They've built it by going out and visiting their existing client base, their lapsed client base, and new clients, and actually introducing the services and finding out what clients actually want. So they've found out that they actually want candidates, but then it's what type of candidates, how that candidates match their business, etc. And what you're talking about there, Martin, is innovation, is that you're right. It's they want to buy innovative partners. So to carry on innovating, you've got to carry on finding out what clients want. You can't find that out from just an email marketing campaign. And if you think most businesses I think any business that's over 50 heads that you're doing business with will have between 4 and 7 decision makers in the recruitment process. And usually what we're doing is speaking to the lowest denominator of that recruitment process, not the person that's actually made the decision right at the top. And therefore, we've got to start to think our social media campaigns probably aren't hitting them, but our human acquisition campaigns and our hearts and minds campaigns and our retention campaigns, we should be in speaking to those people and therefore gathering that information from them. And therefore, we'll be able to find out what they want and then innovate. And I think that's where we get stuck. We get stuck at our recruitment processes. They become very static and very staid. and our clients are moving further away, and we're not taking our processes and moving with them and working from them. I think it was interesting. I was at a talent do in Glasgow about 5 years ago, and I described it that there's a digital wave coming, and you have a choice. You either sit on the beach and let the wave wash you away, or you swim out to the sea and ride the wave and see what happens. And it was interesting. They were said, "Oh well, what's coming? Video interviewing, email marketing is going to become prevalent. Marketing your business is going to become prevalent." And I was almost laughed out of the room to a certain degree. That's never going to happen. Look at the business now. It's all about that front end marketing. But what we've stopped doing is that traditional get in, visit, see the clients, and become part of their process. That's what we forgot to do. Retention. It's interesting, Martin. I'm going to come to you first, Martin, because I'm going to pull on your well of knowledge then as you describe it. Okay, retention is often overlooked in the excitement of acquiring new clients. So what strategies have you found most effective in retaining clients long term whilst focusing on new client acquisition?
So I think that point about complacency is key. Get in front of the customers, ask them questions, continually challenge them, and it's a challenging relationship. You want to be pushing them to tell you what keeps them awake at night, so you can help solve those problems. Because I found the best way to retain a customer is to have multiple service lines into that customer, solve different problems for them in different ways, and be associated with fixing things as opposed to just supplying candidates. And I'd also say use every single resource at your fingertips. So where you are making placements with customers, use those placements as ambassadors. Take those people out, make sure they understand what the client value proposition is. So when they're in rooms with customers, they're also sharing your thoughts and your visions as well. So that's the points I would make is that continual contact, not just you, but every touch point you can possibly have with that customer. Make sure it's consistent and that they are acting on your behalf.
I think that's great advice. I mean, I'm going to come back to the phrase process again. One of the things I consistently say to my clients, and they'll tell you, I say over and over, is that we should never go longer than 3 months between face-to-face client meetings, review meetings. I mean, that's 13 weeks. It doesn't seem very long, but a huge amount can change in a very short period, as we're well aware with customers. This comes back to the point we were making earlier about where are the people we're developing relationships with. Are they still the people we need to be talking to? Are we, what do they say these days, land and expand? Are we doing that? Are we meeting other people, very deliberately, proactively leveraging our existing relationships to identify other people in the organization at different levels in the hierarchy that we can start to develop relationships with, albeit HR, or whether it's procurement or C-suite or it's end user? Who are we developing relationships with? And any gap beyond 3 months, in my opinion, starts to move you into that danger zone, because your competitors are speaking to those clients. They're talking to them, trying to connect with them all of the time. If you fail to consistently see them, speak to them, then you are just opening the back gate to allow your competitors to come in and tread all over you, frankly. Not least the fact that understanding that we work in this helter-skelter environment, commercial environment these days, nothing stays the same for very long. 3 months is a lifetime nowadays. Look at the changes we've all experienced in such a short period of time since COVID began. And I think if you allow a gap of more than 3 months between your interventions with clients, you are really treading a very a tightrope. And I think that there are many opportunities. I come back to what Martin's just said, to consistently speak to clients, give them things, data particularly, that they would find useful, and be there in a proactive fashion. Speak to them not just about candidates or filling roles, but about how you can support them in a more holistic fashion. We are hell-bent on consistently winning new clients, and it's quite, I mean, I see it all the time. We forget about the clients that we already deal with, and we don't leverage those relationships. We wait until the next time they give us a vacancy and then we re-engage with them. That's why we lose people. We have to treasure the opportunity to develop relationships, and to Martin's point, there needs to be a real strategy behind it.
I don't think I've got much to add. There have been excellent answers. If you recall, there was a famous football manager, I can't remember who it was, but who said getting to number one is difficult. Staying there is even harder.
Yeah.
And to your excellent reference, Martin, earlier, you win a piece of business, you've got to work even harder, more intelligently, adapt to the market, all of that good stuff to retain and to keep going. How often have we won a piece of business on a PSL and there hasn't been any work, or your prices have come down and you just become a supplier? You've got to work really intelligently and cleverly, keeping abreast of the market, informing your clients about the market to retain that and stay. But if you stay, to Howard's point at the beginning, it's easier to build profit into your business by keeping the customers happy.
I'll tell you something, Dave. Whoever that manager was that you made reference to wasn't a Tottenham manager. That's all I'd have to say on that point.
Oh, behave,
And
behave.
he wasn't a Manchester United manager either. My interview is tomorrow for that. Just so you know.
To bring it back onto common, sensible ground rather than stupidity, I think the quote is that around about 60% of your annual turnover comes from your existing client base every year.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
If you improve that to 70 to 80% and still carrying on doing your new business development, then you'll start to grow and scale. So I think the problem that we've got is listening to what everyone's said, and what I've been saying is that it's our misconception of our relationship with our client. We tend to think we've got a better relationship that we have. Now, I'm going to take Paul's point. If you went and visited your local restaurant once a quarter, would they class you as a regular customer? No, they wouldn't. They'd class you as a transient customer that comes in once every quarter. But if you're speaking to your client, visiting your client, Zooming your client, etc., constantly, then once a quarter visit, you may get away with them building a deeper relationship. And I think that's the question: is that what do you class as a buying client? What do you class as a lapsed client? Because again, I go into clients and say, right, give me your buying client list, and they give me a long list of clients that have bought, and I say, right, okay, who's bought in the last 8 weeks? And you normally get 1 or 2. Who's bought in the last 3 months? You normally get a few more. Who's bought in the last 12 months? There's loads. So what we're saying is that we should be differentiating our view on what a buying client is. So if you're in the temp market, a buying client is a buying client that's bought in the last 4 weeks. After that, they become lapsed. In the contract market, if they haven't bought in the last 8 weeks, then they're a lapsed client. And in a perm market, if they haven't bought every 3 months, they're lapsed. Now, I know certain clients will only buy once or twice a year, but then what are we doing to regenerate that relationship and to keep developing that relationship? We can't rely on, I had a relationship with them, they bought from me 12 months ago. They knew who I am, because as Paul says, so many people are calling them constantly, and we treat them as they're loyal to us. Well, they're not. They're just a transient relationship that we've got. It's not a trusted relationship, certainly not loyal, and it's certainly not advocacy. So we've got to start to think that it starts with our misconception of what our relationship actually is with the client. And we need to change how we change that, or how we build that relationship, and what levels we think those clients are at. So obviously, time is a great thing that we all need to build. So with time and resources often stretched thin, how do you recommend leaders optimize their efforts across client acquisition activities without losing face on core operation?
Look, if client acquisition isn't a core operation, we should all pack it up, frankly, because it should be. I won't say it's number one priority, because there are lots of priorities in running a business, not least making sure that you're supporting and looking after your own people. But it is absolutely up there, and you have to have time and space put into your daily activities every day, excuse me, to deal with client acquisition and retention. And a failure to do that is just going to result in business ebbing away, or, as we've been saying, failing to realize the opportunity you've got, which is to grow your business further. And we often talk in these webinars about retained business, exclusive business, search and selection style business. All of that, I think, is attainable, but only on the premise that you prioritize developing deep long-term relationships with clients. And it's not a sort of thing you think about once a week. Well, we ought to spend a bit of time doing this. it should be occupying our minds consistently. And of course, client acquisition and retention, or certainly acquisition, is available to us virtually every minute of every day, because we're talking to candidates all the time, establishing leads. We're talking to clients all of the time. We ask the right questions, and as Howard's just saying, and we find the opportunities to spend time with our customers, then we grow our companies. And I think it's a very interesting exercise. I think Dave was saying, or Howard said, to talk about how many new clients have we acquired in the last 24 months? How many have we lost? And to start to really do a bit of number crunching and data analysis on that. What kind of clients are we winning? Where are they coming from? Why did we win them? What sectors are they involved in? How big are they? When did they launch their business? When was that business incepted? What do we know about the organizations? Why did we lose those companies? What's going on? To be asking consistent questions on a daily basis to enable us to be proactive rather than reactive. I could go on a long time, but you guys need to speak as well, so I'm going to clam up and let you talk.
Are you all right, Paul? You feeling okay?
No, well, we don't have 24 hours, unfortunately. But if anyone wants me to talk for 24 hours, I'm open to offers.
Well, half an hour ago, in my brief stint as CEO of IBM, for those few moments, we talked about clients, didn't we? And I'm not going to make any apology for making sure that we all understand that a client is a person we deal with in a company. So take that company and to expand that company and build client activities, take that company, look at all the people you're dealing with at that site, at that location, then take a look at it and go, right, where else in the UK perhaps is that client based? Who else can I go for? What other services do they buy? Then take a look at the location that they may have different geographies. Yeah. Who are the investors in that company? Yeah. Who are the partners of that company? And suddenly you can build a mind map of so many different areas where you're already supplying to either one site or one person or one geography, but there's lots of other areas that you can follow up on. And you're doing that with an existing trading relationship. And it makes the business development and the client acquisition so much easier.
Yeah, and I would just add quickly at the end of that, I think you have to prioritize new acquisition as a leader of a business. It is right up there as probably the most important priority after people, because it has a knock-on effect in more than just the obvious way of growing your business. I've worked with and in businesses that have up to zero pipeline of new customers coming in, and what it does is it removes your ability to push back and say no. And therefore you compromise on margin elsewhere, you compromise on the value service elsewhere, and it dilutes your offering to the market as a whole. You have to have that belief that you are going to win new business to be able to position yourself appropriately in the market.
Yeah, well said.
I think as leaders, you're always stretched, aren't you? Time is always you're getting pulled in every direction for everything. But the question is, or the way I looked at that question is for you as the business leader, is your business development habit? Or is it just something that falls into your lap occasionally? And I think as soon as you make it habit and you're doing it on a regular basis, and then you drive the habit into the rest of the business as well. And that means that we've got to start to think about, if we look at our client base, you've got your new clients, that we need to be bringing new clients in to grow and scale and replace clients that are falling out. We need to resurrect our lapsed clients, but we also need to develop our existing client base. And I think that's where we've got to start to think, how many times have we talked into the past about, as business leaders, we were always out visiting our major clients, seeing our key clients, seeing our growth clients, etc. But we weren't going to see the recruitment line. We were going to go see the C-suite line, and we were going to see the line that actually makes decisions and have conversations about business rather than conversations about recruitment. And I think that's the difference. We've got to start to think about level selling into businesses. Now, if you're a solo operation, then you've still got to think about, you can't just speak to the recruitment line. Who else can that recruitment line introduce you to? So we can start to safeguard ourselves further into business, which goes back to Martin's points about selling multiple operations. or services into that business, or selling different services to different parts of the business that might need that. We've all worked with clients or worked on clients where we thought we've sewn the client up, and we suddenly find there's a massive hole somewhere else that, another agency is filling all those requirements. So I think it's got to be habit for the business leader to be absolutely championing new business, or business development, not new business, just business development as a whole, and how we grow that, and therefore gaining data on who's growing, who's not, etc. Going back to what we've talked about, Paul, quite often using the Boston Matrix, right? Who's the rising star? Who's our question mark that we know nothing about? Okay, who's the cash cow that we need to develop, and who's the dog? And that goes back to Martin's comment about sometimes we need to be able to walk away from clients, and to do that, you have to have other clients to fill that gap straight away, so you don't lose revenue from there. So I think it's all about creating that habit from a leader, and not just pushing that habit down to the sales staff. You as a leader have to champion that habit to make sure it works. So what role then does data play in informing client acquisition strategies, and how should recruitment agencies level data to personalize their outreach and build strong connections with their clients?
There's a paradox in the answer to this, because we often talk about the people that succeed in our industry are very often individuals with very high levels of emotional intelligence. If you actually analyze what emotional intelligence is, it's a lot to do with instincts. It's that middle part of your brain that is that shouts at you. It's the emotional thing that goes on. And being able to connect with people, develop long-term deep relationships, often connected with that emotional element of your brain. But actually running a business is a lot to do with the front part of your brain, which is to do with facts, information, data, proper hard-nosed information that can help you to really understand what it is that customers need, how we can improve our services, where the signs are for the new opportunities, where the signs are for situations which are beginning to drop away. And to do that, you need to squash the emotional element of your brain and engage that analytical part of your brain. Now, I think for lots of people in recruitment, that's difficult because they've spent their lives using their personalities and their innate ability to win hearts and minds, which has proved very successful over the years. But when you are trying to drive your business forward, having to step back every week and analyze information and data, the numbers crunching, looking at the data that sits in our CRM and so forth, and making sense of that stuff, not least also externally understanding what the market's doing, being able to read posts, blogs, talking to clients, examining competitor information and activities and so forth. All of that informs you as to how you can provide better services to clients. And also, to a large extent, the information that you can give to customers that will accentuate the emotional intelligence that you bring to bear when you talk with them. So it's really important. It's, as I say, it's a paradox. We work on our emotional intelligence, but great businesses really use data very intelligently.
Paul, I'd echo that in the sense that we are emotive people, and we probably back all of ourselves in front of a customer to convey a point and win the hearts and minds of that customer. But as Howard said earlier on, there are 7 to 9 decision makers in the process. You won't get in front of all 7 to 9, and therefore you can't use that emotional intelligence to win the argument. So I often find data is a really good way of stakeholders representing your views to other stakeholders and winning that argument for you. It does sounds paradoxical, as you say, but it takes the emotion out of it so that you can win the argument when you're not in the room.
Great point.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think using data intelligently, because we're all awash with so much data, aren't we?
Yeah.
So what data do you need to win more clients? Do you need to know who's hiring when? Can you use LinkedIn? Can you use Sourcewell? Can you use some of the many products that are available? What data do you need, and how are you going to use it? Would be a question that I would ask a leader. And then the second bit of that is, how can you make that more personal? Because our brands are personalities. They reflect how we operate. And if you can use the data, which is empiric, and the personality, and get that balance right, then I think that can help to win more business.
It's interesting, isn't it? I read an article, and the article's about what clients really want from, business recruitment agencies. And one of the things that it said in the top three things is they wanted more data to make better informed decisions when bringing staff into their business. So if we start to think about our own business, about recruitment agencies, what data do our employees need? What data do our managers need? What data do the leaders need? Then what data do our clients need? So we start to identify trends, then we start to able to help employees bill more. We help managers to hit their target. We help leaders to achieve the company goals. But then we also help our clients achieve their goals. So I think we've got to start to being data led about what decisions we're making. And how many times do we walk into a client and look at some of the data in a client and go, why are we working with that client? We're making zero money. But to that client, to that agency, it's a vanity project. They're doing that. But it's not making anything. So why are we doing it? So I think we've got to start to think that data leads or creates an integral part in making informed decisions that help move you forward as a recruitment agency, but also helps assist your clients to move forward. And sometimes the people that need that data, as Martin said, are part of the other decision makers within there that you may have a conversation with. And it's interesting, I know in our normal webinars, I normally spout a number of stats at the beginning of a webinar. It's really interesting how many people email me or talk to me and say, where's that stat come from? What's that stat from? And I've now started putting the links to where the stats have come from, and the amount of business owners that use those stats to help their staff realize a goal, a potential, change things in their strategy, etc., because it's led by data and it's not just by led what someone's saying from there. Ben's just come on, so we record every minute within our business, so we're able to record our investment in pennies. It's about business changing. I love that, about investment to the penny.
Yeah.
What's the old saying? If you look after the penny, the pound looks after themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and you'd know, mate, you're a Yorkshireman, so that comes from the heart, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Very short arms and very long pockets. My pockets start at my ankles. That's where they'll stay. So when we start to look at those things, then, when it comes to hearts and minds, when we're starting to really work with the client, we've got past that initial couple of roles and we're starting to properly work in close. What are the key emotional triggers then that agencies should focus on to build loyalty and trust, not just remain at a transactional relationship where I think the vast majority of the recruitment market is at?
Okay, I've got one word answer for this: authenticity. The fact is, you have to give a damn. You do. There's no way you can fake it. You've got to be genuinely interested, in fact, passionate about providing an outstanding service to your customer. Reading from a script, remembering what you were trained to do isn't good enough. It's got to come from, you used the phrase hearts and minds. It's got to come from your heart. It's got to come from your mind. You've got to give a damn. Now, I think if as there are a number of people here today I recognize as owning their own businesses, that's not difficult. Being passionate about your business and about your customers is pretty easy when you run your own business. You have to be. But I think it's also making sure that sentiment runs right through and very deep into your own organization. And if you have people that are passionate about their clients, passionate about delivering outstanding service consistently, and all the things we've talked about, then you have the foundations for a very good business. If you have people who are doing it purely for money and they don't really care about service, and we all know we've all worked with people like that, then you have a pretty dangerous situation. You have to give a damn. I know it sounds a bit simplistic, but it comes from my heart. You have to really care a lot.
Well, I'm going to say one thing. Firstly, Paul, that was more than one word.
Oh, all right, that's a fair point.
And you don't become CEO of IBM without knowing that. But you're right. You have to care, and I think you can flip that. You take your relationship with the client. You've been with them for 3 months or 6 months. Ask them the question: how do you feel when dealing with us? If it was Jump, how do you feel when dealing with Jump? How do you feel when dealing with it? Because people, it's that old saying, people remember how you feel, how you made them feel. And if you can get into the feelings part of the relationship, then you're going to get into the advocacy part much faster, particularly if working with your consultant or your team or your manager or your business is making the client feel successful, happy, better, honest. And to your word, Paul, that authenticity then matters, because what you're saying to the client is, we really do care about you, and let us demonstrate how we do it, because we want to know how you feel in dealing with us. So I would encourage everybody to keep asking a client side question.
Yeah, and I think it's about balance. It's a really fine line between winning hearts and minds and that passion that Paul talked about, and giving stuff away for free. And in a tight market, it's often tempting to do that with customers. But actually, my experience is that clients value a service more when they understand the effort that's gone into it. So don't be afraid of asking customers in return for the insights you give them. So, I will do this for you, but I'd really appreciate if you could set me up a meeting with so and so, or whatever it might be. Don't just think this is a one-way street. You use that hearts and emotions two ways.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing I'd add to that is, and I've said this on numerous occasions, recruitment, we're trained to build the pain, find the problem, accentuate the problem, and then come in like the knight on a white steed and cure the problem. But what mindset does that put the client in? You're always telling the client they've got a problem, you've got a problem, you've got a problem. But what you were saying then, Paul, and what everyone's alluding to, if you're getting into a client and make the client look good and helping the client to achieve their end goals, so understanding what their goals are, understanding how you align to their end goals, etc., and making them, helping them achieve, and then demonstrating how you've helped them to achieve, all of a sudden gives the client a very different view of you, because you're helping them to achieve. You are a prospect. And it goes back to that conversation I say all the time. We treat every client as a prospect. 90% of the clients treat their agencies as suspect. And they treat us like a suspect. So if we've got to start to drive that prospect to prospect relationship, we've got to show what's good for them, and they've got to show what's good for us. And we've got to help them to show what good looks like and help them to deliver that. And I think once we start doing that, you get a very different relationship with your client, rather than looking to build the pain and keep building the pain and saying to the client that you're rubbish, you're poor at this, you're poor at this. What happens if you don't do that? Oh, that's going to be awful. Why are we doing that? Why aren't we trying to look at how do we make that the other way around and just rephrase the question? Oh, you've got a problem there. How do I make you look good? How do I cover that problem for you? How do I help you get to the next stage? It's all about helping, I think, which builds a better relationship with them.
Right.
So a question here then that sort of comes as we come towards the end. So again, it's going to be quite a quick one question answer for you then, Paul. Maybe two, maybe three. Looking ahead, what do you believe will be the biggest challenge then for recruitment agencies in the term of client acquisitions, and how they can proactively prepare for it?
So, I mean, we're in the age of AI. It's in the news constantly. We're very aware of it in our own industry sector. All the new tech is almost overwhelming, frankly. I mean, go to any of the recruitment expos. There was a recent one in Birmingham, and walk around that hall, and it's become a tech environment. It's no longer about the things we remember from 10 years ago. What I think we have to remember is that whilst tech can really help us, and it's becoming cheaper and cheaper to use some of the tech, but whilst it can really help us, what we must never lose sight of when it comes to client acquisition and retention is it will always come down to the things we've spent time talking about today, which is building personal relationships, but also leveraging those personal relationships to ensure that we develop other relationships, as Martin was saying, with other people. And then you revert back to, if you can't spread yourself thinly to go and spend time with lots of different people, then data becomes very important. What can we give clients that helps them to run their businesses better? How do we provide added value over and beyond what we get paid for, which is placing great candidates? So I think that it's getting that balance. We started by talking around that, and I think we finished by saying that it's getting the balance and making sure we use technology in a very smart way, but we never lose sight of the fact that our business has always been and will always be about developing relationships with clients.
I think if you're a business leader, the biggest challenge is being swayed away from being true to yourself. You set up your business for a reason. And with everything that's going on in the world, with the rise of AI, the rise of data, all of this good stuff, as long as you remain true to yourself and you use those things to help you do that, then I think you'll be fine. The biggest challenge is you set your business up to do something great, and you get swayed by everything else that's going around you, and you're not anchored into something which is about what you're doing. So I think the challenge is to keep anchored, to keep growing, and use that other stuff to help you do that.
Yeah, and Howard, your question started with looking ahead, so I'll be youthfully optimistic. I can use that word youthful on this call. Actually, I feel authentic in saying that. Not relative. I think that if we're optimistic that the market's going to pick up, I think the one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face is that customers don't really understand what it is they want or what it is they can get in the marketplace. They've brought a lot of talent acquisition in-house, now let that go, but they still want to retain control of the process. They still want to drive cost out of the process. So we have to educate them into the value that using our organizations actually brings to them. And also in certain markets, the skills they think they can turn the tap on don't exist in the volumes they want in the UK. So we have to use data and insights to show them that they might have to be creative in how they access talent and what's actually achievable in the marketplace. So I think your question about who's going to succeed in the market, it's those organizations that are proactively now engaging with customers, educating customers, and making them understand what is realistically possible as they look to hire in the months to come, so that they position themselves as the supplier of choice when they do.
If you think about the market, it's getting more and more competitive. So you think about Porter's 5 forces. There are internal pressures, there's external pressures, etc. So we look at that. And I started to, listen to what you were saying, I just wrote down here, value beats price when price doesn't create value. So if we can start to create value to our clients, and the value that clients want at the moment is staff, employees of quality available almost immediately to them. But if we know what the client wants, and this is where about getting to understand what the client actually wants, if I know the client wants in 6 months' time this type of person, I can start finding that person now and take it to the client, rather than letting the client come to me and say, in 4 weeks' time, I need this person. So I think we need to be starting to think about value and quality of our service, and that will always beat price. In this type of market, we know there's going to be lots of competition. There's lots of people who'll be, shredding cost, dropping their prices to win clients. We all know, because we've all been in the market long enough, that after a while, clients come back to the ones that bring them value. Price doesn't become an objective. So we've got to start to think now, I think it's about, there's more competition. What value can you offer? For those that don't want the value, walk away, because there's always clients that will. Ladies and gents, that's it. Dave, Paul, Martin, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting hour. I hope you've got lots out of it. There's lots more to come. If you want more guidance, please visit our website, www.jumpadvisory.com. Please jump onto LinkedIn if you haven't already been sent an invite on LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn we are now running a session for lots and lots of recruitment agencies that will start in November. And that session will be on how to build a business, putting business plans together. It's on a page called the Playbook for Profit series. So look for the Playbook for Profit series and sign up for it. And that's to say, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you all in a month's time.
Thanks, everybody. Take good care.
Have a good week, everybody. Take care.